Hello, listeners. Hello, listeners. Today, the 22nd of April, you are listening to us live from Nottingham, 97.1 FM, Radio Faza. We welcome you to our special show, Domestic Abuse, Seek Help. This show is about creating awareness, stimulating expectations, manifesting hope for those who have been victims of or survivors of domestic or sexual abuse. If you would like to participate, we are live on Facebook now. We are available also on YouTube, we're streaming live. Or you can message us on our dedicated WhatsApp page, which you'll find on your screen now. Usually this program holds 11 a.m. till 1 p.m. on Thursdays. My name is Olusegun. Today on this show, I have a special guest, Veronica Simpson. She's not just versed in the subject matter, but is actually an advocate. Let me tell you how the show runs today. We're going to make an attempt to let you understand what domestic abuse is all about. Before we start the show, Veronica is very passionate about raising domestic and sexual violence awareness. She is specialized in supporting survivors of abuse. She studied in Birkbeck University in psychodynamic and psychotherapy counseling. She is a registered independent domestic violence advocate, supporting those suffering from or at risk of domestic abuse and sexual violence. Veronica got nominated and awarded Women Appreciating Women Award winner 2020. 100 Inspiration Women nominee number 50 in the year 2019. This show is all about creating awareness and even about encouraging families, so it's not gender specific, irrespective of color, race, people, you will be tremendously informed. So this morning, please let's make welcome Veronica to share with us what domestic abuse is all about. Veronica?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Olu. Thank you to you listeners that are tuned in to Radio Faza 97.1 FM. Thank you for inviting me as your guest, Olu, on this show, on this radio show, Behind the Scenes, Domestic Abuse, Get Help. And thank you for such a warm welcome and introduction in terms of my background, and I'll just share a little bit more with you. I am a specialist in domestic abuse and sexual violence. I've been in the sector now for 10 plus years, and I've worked for various main DV service providers in various roles. I'm really excited, and as you already said, I'm passionate about this subject. I'm really, really passionate about the subject, but I'm especially excited about sharing information with you on Radio Fazza 97.1 FM with the listeners, with a hope that it will help and enhance the awareness around domestic abuse and sexual violence. So when we think about domestic violence and domestic abuse, we think about relationships. So today, I just want to encourage you, because I know that a majority of people like to talk about relationships because they can be so very challenging. So I just want to encourage you today to just reach out to a friend and encourage them to tune in, and to also, whatever you're doing, whether you're driving your car, whether you're at work, whatever it is, if you're at home doing a bit of housework, I just want to encourage you to keep locked in to us this morning on 97.1 FM. So relationships, Ulu, when we think about the complexities of relationships, I always kind of think, everything else, if you want to achieve something, you can go and study it and you can achieve the ultimate goal of your degree, your diploma, whatever it is, your doctorate, as long as you kind of study and you're diligent. However, when it comes to relationships, you can't study for a positive outcome. You have to invest and hope that the person that you're investing in is going to be investing in you in a reciprocal way. But unfortunately, when we first start out on a relationship, hoping that, for a positive outcome, hoping that, together you'll work through the relationship together, that sometimes that isn't the case. And unfortunately, for some, we find ourselves in a relationship that is far from healthy. So, as the guest on Ulu's show, Behind the Scenes Domestic Abuse Get Help, over the forthcoming weeks, we're hoping that you will be able to make the comparison between unhealthy and healthy relationship. What is a abusive relationship? Helping to demystify what an unhealthy relationship is in comparison to a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to be doing today. So I just want to also just point out to you and highlight, and you can tell me whether you agree or not, and that domestic abuse is everybody's business, including, thank you, Ulu, including faith leaders, organization, community leaders. It is everybody's responsibility. It's also the responsibility of the state and all our communities to help end, to enhance the awareness with an aim of stopping, reducing the numbers in domestic abuse and domestic violence. We want to be free from violence and abuse. It is a basic human right which requires the commitment of everyone to uphold. Victims should not be held responsible for the abuse, or have to try and stop it occurring on their own. So today, when you're listening to the show, I just want to encourage you that if there's anything that resonates with you in terms of what we discussed today, you are not alone. And Ulu will be providing you with the information of whom and how you can get that practical support or a listening ear. Ulu will be sharing that information with you throughout the duration of this show today. Thank you.
So thank you, Veronica, for starting out on that note. So as she has rightly said, we are right now live on Facebook. If you want to participate on this program, you want to contribute, yes, you can do that, but via our WhatsApp dedicated telephone number, which is on your screen now. You can reach us. Otherwise, you can send us messages in Facebook we'll still be able to get back to you. You can also reach us on the radiofaza.co.uk. That's the website address. So we're going to go on a very short musical break now. And thereafter, we're going to continue to explore the subject matter, wanting to know more. What's domestic violence? What's domestic abuse? When was this first, the awareness towards this first started? So just please stay where you are. Don't touch the dial. We're going to get back to you soon. Hello, listeners. Thank you very much for staying with us. So you're welcome back on our show, Behind the Screens. Domestic abuse, seek help. This morning with me again is Veronica, a special guest. So she's been explaining to us what the subject matter we're discussing this morning is all about, which is what's domestic abuse, what's domestic violence. So I'm just going to let her continue from where we stopped the last time for you to have a better understanding of what we are sharing on this show. Veronica, you're welcome. Hello, Veronica. We can't hear you. You probably need to unmute.
Excuse me, I'm really sorry about that, listener.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I was speaking away, you couldn't hear me.
Yes,
Excuse me.
Definitely.
Okay, so as I was saying, thank you very much, Olu. Thank you very much to you listeners on Radio Faza FM 97.1. Keep it locked in. Today we're going to be talking about domestic abuse. We're going to be talking about relationships. But first of all, because we're talking about domestic abuse and sexual abuse, sexual violence, we need to ensure that you are aware what the definition is. And also, I'm sure you're going to want to know what the statistics are, especially in Nottinghamshire or where we are today. So first of all, let me just share with you that according to the crime survey for England and Wales year ending March 2019, an estimated, are you ready for these statistics, listeners? An estimated 5.7% of adults, which is 2.4 million.
That's huge,
Two,
isn't it?
absolutely. It's humongous. 2.4 million experienced domestic abuse in the last year. 2.4 million, Olu.
That's massive.
That's why we have to put a spotlight on this subject. We just have to put, a spotlight on this subject. There was no significant change in the prevalence of domestic abuse experienced in the last year compared to the year ending March 2018. The police recorded a total of 1.25 million domestic abuse related incidents and crimes in the year ending March 2019. Of these, 746,219 were recorded as domestic abuse related crimes, an increase of 24% from the previous year.
Wow.
Wow.
That's massive.
And we haven't even had the statistics, the collated statistics from March 2020 to March 2021, when we were in the pandemic because of COVID-19, where many people were forced to stay at home. Those that were in abusive relationships prior, and those that may have started to experience and recognize what it is, because they were subjected to be locked in with that abusive partner.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what the statistics are going to look like, Olu, come, when they're actually released? Because we know that Refuge said there was a surge of 61% for those that made contact to their services during that time. 61% surge. People looking for help because they were subject to abuse from the person that's supposed to love them, the person that's supposed to nurture them, the person that is supposed to, work with them, work together, was actually, when you think about domestic abuse, it's likened to terrorism at home, to be terrorized in your own home. When you think about your home, you think about, safety, solence, security, all of those things that we kind of, we take for granted, that, once you shut the front door, that you've locked everything out, you've locked all of those things outside.
Unfortunately, you could become a prisoner in your own house.
Say that again, Olu. What did you say?
Unfortunately, you could be a prisoner in your own house.
You can become a prisoner in your own home. Absolutely. And we're very much aware, aren't we, Olu, that, when we're talking about domestic abuse and domestic violence and sexual violence, that it's in a very emotive subject. We do not, we can't, it's a subject, it's a very serious subject. And we're always mindful that, those, when we're sharing and putting the spotlight on domestic abuse, that somebody that might be listening today, someone that, a loved one, a family friend, that, might be suffering from domestic abuse. But we just want to keep repeating throughout this time that we're together, that, you're not alone. You are not alone. So if you are, if it does, anything that we share today, if it does resonate with you, reach out and get the help that you need. Olu will continue to tell you whom you need to reach out to during the course of the show.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Veronica. That's very, very insightful, very informative. And we wouldn't even expect such a huge number of people, citizens, to be affected. So that's why we need this information passed on to our various communities, not only in Nottinghamshire, but in the whole wide world. Anyway, I'm glad we're being listened to all over the world at this time. So we're just going to go on another break now. Our dear listeners, please remain tuned in, and we're just going on a short break. We're going to continue after now. Welcome you back, our dear listeners. So we have been discussing the subject matter, domestic abuse, seek help. So please follow on with my guest this morning, Veronica Simpson. Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you, listeners. Locked into 97.1 FM, the Radio Fazar. Behind the screen, domestic abuse, get help. So before I continue with this, with the statistics, let's just share the definition first and foremost. So domestic violence is the systematic pattern of behavior on the part of the abuser designed to what? To control their partner. The abuse can be physical, emotional, psychological, financial, or sexual. Anyone forced to alter their behavior because they are frightened of their partner's reaction is being abused. I'll just say that again. Anyone forced to alter their behavior because they're frightened of their partner's reaction is being abused. It can begin at any stage of the relationship. Domestic abuse is rarely a one-off incident. Incidents generally become more frequent and more severe over time. Domestic violence can happen to anyone, regardless of their age, social background, gender, religion, sexuality, or ethnicity. Whilst domestic abuse happens in all relationships, it can happen in a heterosexual relationship, but also in the LGBT relationships as well, which is the heterosexual, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. So as you can see, no one is exempt, regardless of class, color, background, gender, religion, and age. Statistics show that the vast majority of domestic abuse incidents is carried out by men and experienced by women. However, men also do experience domestic abuse and domestic violence and sexual violence. But we'll talk more about that and each area of domestic abuse as we continue to define it and put the spotlight on domestic abuse today. So we're going to go back now to look at some of the statistics again around various areas of domestic abuse and how it affects people and our country and the people within it. Okay, thank you. So what's the impact of domestic abuse? The impact on women is almost 1 in 3 women aged between 16 and 59 will experience domestic abuse in their lifetime. Olu, when you think about the age between the age of 16 and 59, I don't know for you, but I know what, you know, when I think about that age gap, I know what I think about. What is it? What does it?
That's a very huge gap, age gap. And it's very unfortunate that such people at such a tender age of 16 are getting wrapped up in this subject matter. Veronica, before we continue any further, we're just going to go on adverts now. And our listeners, we have reached a very critical point in this discussion this morning. So just hold on. Don't touch it down. We're just going to go on a short advert. Thank you.
Hours to spare. वो सब्जियां हो क्या लमकाया भाई आपको तो बची है ना पैसे भी कमा सकते हाँ
Injured Claims Nottingham, 139 Bradford Road, NG7 5DU. Telephone 0115 934 6555.
Now we're gradually coming out of lockdown. We can get together again outside. Have a picnic for 6 in the park. Separate blankets and lots of space.
Hello, listeners. We welcome you back to our show, Behind the Screens, Domestic Violence, Seek Help, only on 97.1 FM Radio Faza. We've been discussing on the subject matter uh, of domestic abuse, domestic violence. And before we went on the advertisement break, Veronica was explaining to us how serious the matter we're discussing is, especially in relation to the period of lockdown. We've seen the statistics prior to lockdown. We've seen what happened as a result of people getting frustrated out that there was a surge in the incidence and the prevalence of domestic abuse and violence. Now, we're going to continue from where we stopped before the break. So you were trying to explain to us the wide age gap, and indeed, I can say that it's really bad if we have to be worrying about our teenagers who are wrapped up in these unfortunate incidents. And then it is not even leaving out the elderly, people that are almost hitting their 60s. So it's such a huge age gap and age variety that is affected in the subjects that we're discussing about this morning, the subject matter. So do you want to shed more light, Veronica, on this matter?
Yes, thank you very much. Listeners, thank you very much, Ulu. So, yeah, we were looking at almost 1 in 3 women aged between 16 and 59 will experience
Yeah.
domestic abuse in their lifetime. And quite rightly, it's very concerning that we, have to be thinking about our young people that are in education at the age of 16. And if they are embarking or into any kind of relationship, that they will be able to differentiate what a healthy relationship is as opposed to an unhealthy relationship. And for parents, I don't know how that makes you feel,
So
but
that's,
sure.
that
Sorry, go
makes
ahead.
the issue of parenting very, very critical one here. Responsible parenting, looking after our young ones, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But also, as well, for me, it's just kind of highlights the importance of having open and honest conversations with our young people. I know that when I was growing up, I don't know for you, Olu, but I know that when I was growing up, there was so many taboo subjects, things your parents just wasn't going to speak to you about. They weren't going to speak to you about the birds and the bees, for example, which now you, as a parent, you have to, regardless of how uncomfortable that you feel, surely as parents, we want to be the ones that educate our children or a part of that sharing of information and not just leave it down to the school
Yeah.
or their
Or
peers.
their peers, yes, because they can then
Absolutely.
be fed with the wrong information and then miss it. So I don't see anything wrong in you as a parent taking it up with your children from when they were very young, get them informed, get them told the right things to do, and then they are informed and they know their place in the
Yeah.
society. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, it's great that we're able to share this information on this platform so that it will provoke thought around the conversations that, um, you know, around unhealthy relationships,
Oh, yeah.
and for us to have that conversation with our young people, and to, you know, no longer look at subjects that our parents wouldn't talk to us about, but talk about the things that make us feel uncomfortable, have those conversations so that they in turn feel comfortable in terms of speaking to us. And in terms of the other end of this age range 59. It doesn't stop there, because I've certainly worked with elders that have also experienced domestic abuse, which is, you know, they've suffered a whole lifetime of experiencing domestic abuse. And, you know, for them to get support at this age and the options that are available to them, sometimes it makes it a little bit more challenging, because of the practicalities of you know, the options that are available to them. Is it
So from all
feasible?
indications, from what you've said so far, children could be victims, adults could be victims, people in their middle age could be victims.
That's right.
So we're looking at a wide range of people in the society, isn't
That's
it?
right. Absolutely. It just makes you think, doesn't it? You know,
Yeah.
do we know somebody that has is experiencing domestic abuse, and what can we do to help them? So moving on, 2 women a week are killed by a current or former partner. And we see this, don't we, Olu, on the news? We see where I'm going to say a male perpetrator wipes out his entire family, wipes out the wife, the children, and then, you know, in some circumstances, they actually kill themselves as well.
Will you say such kinds of people, that individual wiping of family members, could have received help? You think he could have received help
If
if they've
in,
been aware of what we're discussing today?
I think that in terms of a perpetrator, I'm going to say that in order for a person to change their behavior, they need to first acknowledge what they're doing is wrong. They need to take responsibility for their actions, and they need to seek help. But first of all, it's about acknowledging, you know, what I'm doing, I don't like what I do, and then seeking the help that's required in order to change that behavior. And, you know, for some victims, survivors, victims of abuse, survivors of abuse, they kind of think that they can change that individual. But the truth is, Ulu, I can't change you, you can't change me.
People are
Change
set in their ways.
And change comes from within. It comes from ownership. It comes from, I want to do something to change this behavior. I no longer want to continue doing what I do. But equally, in terms of the victim, they also have a responsibility to themselves, I would say. I was just watching, I like Michelle Obama. I find her very empowering. I don't know if you like her as well. Most people do. But anyway, I was watching her. She's got a book, and the book's called Becoming, I believe. But anyway, in it, she said within her marriage, she had to be herself, take ownership for herself, her well-being in that relationship. And I think that is so important.
Very,
If you're
very
in a
much.
relationship, you know, regardless that two become one, but you also need to take responsibility and own your life,
That's
as
right.
even though it's shared. Does that make sense, Olu? I
That's
don't know
right.
how
That's
you feel
correct.
about that.
That's the way it's supposed to be. You have to bring in make a lot of effort to ensure that that relationship work and it's a fair relationship. Everyone is happy in there. So it takes a lot of effort on the part of all the people committed.
But
So
can I just ask you on that? Well,
yeah,
you said that, you know, it's you have to kind of take ownership
yeah.
of that. What do you mean exactly
You've
by
got to
that?
be a responsible individual on your own and live up to it as a person. So you don't want to you can't give what you don't have, basically. So you got to work on yourself and ensure that people around you are comfortable with you. People around you they can trust you, you know. So and trust is a mutual thing. And then you, especially for those who are heads of families, you lead from the front. You don't lead from behind. So it's very important that we are aware of all these as citizens, as members of our community. And what happens in your immediate environment is what goes round in the society. So if we can work on it within, then we can work. It comes out to be of tremendous benefit and advantage to our entire society.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's interesting what you just said there, Olu. You said, you know, what happens, and I'm going to paraphrase, what happens inside the home spills out into the community.
Yeah, yeah, it does.
Absolutely.
It does.
You know, if people are experiencing domestic abuse inside, especially our young, impressionable youth that are, you know, in that kind of environment, surely could that be the reasons why we see so much of youth violence, gang affiliation, and things like that, because of
Could be.
what's going on in the home?
Yeah, it could be.
It
So,
definitely has
so that
an
this
effect.
places a huge responsibility on parents and appropriate parenting. So that's what spills out into the society.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, for those that are suffering from domestic abuse or sexual violence, did you know that an estimated around 3 women, this is really quite sad, Ulu, 3 women a week will commit suicide as a result of domestic abuse, domestic violence.
That's unfortunate.
3 women a week. And it just makes you think, how long were they suffering in silence? How long were they, you know, was it having an impact on their mental well-being?
Health, yeah.
Yeah. So again, we're just encouraging you that if, you know, anything that you're listening to today through this conversation, that if it is having an effect on you, that there's help available for you to get that help. Do not remain in silence. You are definitely not alone. And, you know, in terms of, you know, what we've just shared in terms of 1 in 3 women commit suicide, you know, a GP is a really great place to go and have that conversation as well, you know, because if it's affecting their mental health, surely, you know, going to their GP is going to also help them. So women who experience domestic abuse are twice as likely, as I just said, to experience depression. Yeah. Okay. Also, 40% of homeless women state domestic abuse as a contributor to homelessness. So 40% of homeless women state domestic violence as a contributing factor to their homelessness. You know, so it's also demonstrating, you know, that the impact it has in terms of gender at the moment, the impact that it has on gender, because it's saying that, you know, that based on the research that's been done, that 40% of women, because of domestic abuse, will become homeless. So it's not just the abuse that's happening immediately in the home,
So
that
it's
it impacts.
it's impacting the, you know, the society itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then it places a huge responsibility on the community, on the government. Or are they going to be taking care of the homeless again?
Yeah. It's going to have an impact financially, but you're right, it's going to have an impact, further impact on the victim, survivor of domestic abuse as well. And a financial impact in terms of, you know, the government having to rehouse families, refuge spaces.
So domestic violence basically is it's a crime in itself. It is a crime, and it's something that everyone in the society, everyone in the community have to hold up responsibility to play their role and to ensure that we bring this to an end as much as we can.
Absolutely. Totally. We're going to be talking about the impacts it has on the male gender now. Okay.
Probably we should have a bit of break
Thank you.
and then we continue. Our dear listeners, you are listening to us on Radio Faza 97.1 FM. If you want to contribute to this program, you find where to hook up with us on your screen now. You see the WhatsApp signal, and also you can also send us contributions on Facebook, and we are live on YouTube as well. So we're just going to have a short break now, and then we continue thereafter. Okay, we welcome you back to our show, Behind the Screens. We've been discussing on the subject matter, domestic abuse. If you need help, seek help. So we're going to proceed as Veronica tells us more on some vital things to know still.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad that you've come back after the break to hear more information around domestic abuse and sexual violence. Thank you, Ulu. Thank you, listeners, for locking in with us this afternoon, this morning. So we're going to look at the ratio between, in terms of gender, men and domestic violence and abuse. So this equates to a prevalence rate of approximately 7 in 100 women are affected by domestic abuse and 4 in 100 men. I don't know what you think about hearing that, Ulu.
Is it not interesting? Is it not interesting that both, because when they mentions domestic violence and sexual abuse, naturally, the tendency is to be thinking in the line that women are the only victims. So it's so interesting to know that we have like 4% men, while we have 7% or thereabouts for women. So it's not leaving out any gender, isn't it?
No, there's no partiality. It's definitely affects both genders, as we know, and it's part of the definition of domestic abuse. It definitely includes men. So we need to have that conversation and include male victims in the conversation when it comes to domestic abuse and domestic violence. But what you'll find is that majority of the time we will refer to the female gender, we will say she and her. And there is full reason for that, and we will explore that even more, but it's because men are less likely to report it. So 15% of men represent as much as 15% of all cases of domestic partner violence. Male victims are also more likely to seek medical attention, to seek medical care, so that the incidents may be underreported. However, in the year ending March 2018, 9 times more women than men were killed by their ex-partners. And I know that, with women tend to talk more. We tend to be a little bit more open about our emotional experiences. And I don't know, you're a man, Ulu, so you
men are generally less expressive, to be honest, and so they keep a lot in there. It's just this masculine kind of thing. So that's actually, that could be a contributing factor, to be honest. So you're right. With ladies, spill it out more, and there's an extent to which they can hold it. So I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, but it just goes to show that women do have more resources maybe available to them in order for them to share their experiences. And we will talk to our sisters, our mothers, our grands, we will speak about it. Talking about domestic abuse and domestic violence, let's not pretend that it's easy to talk about it, because a majority of people will not speak about it, and there'll be an element of silence around it because of shame, guilt, being exposed, wanting to, wanting your relationship to work, not recognizing that it is abuse. So we do kind of have the similar challenges in terms of talking about abuse. You can talk about your relationship, but are you going to say, well, I think that my partner's abusing me?
So there's a kind of self-denial there. There's a kind of denial there, so to say.
Denial, yeah, minimization of what's really going on. And there's reasons behind it. And we need to ensure that when we're having these conversations that we're not being judgmental, we're not discriminating, because we understand, Olu, the reasons behind the stigmatism, the stigma behind domestic abuse and domestic violence, and why people tend to be silent. And in that, sometimes it's more preferable for them to speak to somebody outside of their friendship groups, outside of their circles of support, outside of that relationship, and speak to people that they feel like. You used the word earlier on, and the word of trust. They're only going to speak to people that
the support they're looking for.
And someone that they can trust, and not only trust, but also know that when that information is shared, that they're able to do something to support them. But sometimes it's just a listening ear that, that person needs. They may not want to do anything, which is okay, because we can't force people to, do what they don't want to do. But we can be a listening ear without being judgmental and without being discriminative. Women experience domestic abuse, domestic violence with much more intensity. 89% of people who experience 4 or more incidents of domestic abuse are women. But surely, in terms of the repetition helps you to define whether your relationship is abusive or not. Because, there could be a one-off incident that, could be an incident that's quite intense, and, it's not normal behavior for either of you to behaving in that way, but there might be this one-off.
It's an isolation.
In isolation, absolutely. But where there's repetition of the abuse, that's how we're able to demystify whether the relationship is abusive or not. And I think in terms of that, if you feel scared, if your partner makes you feel fearful, if they make you feel scared, if you feel like you're walking on eggshells, these are all contributing factors to define the relationship as abusive and unhealthy. If you're fearful, when that person comes through the door, that you think, oh, she's home, what's going to happen next? Or he's home, what's going to happen next? But we're going to be elaborating more and more about that, aren't we, Olu, as we go along?
Yes, we will do.
Yeah, we'll be exploring it more.
We're exploring it more. So we're just going to go on another advertisement break now. And afterwards, when we return, we're going to look more critically into what we're discussing today. But so far, the statistical data being shared this morning would also inform our dear listeners of how crucial, how important it is to be well informed, not necessarily for yourself, probably just for your neighbor, just for your friend, because how soaring the statistics is tell us that there's virtually no street, there's virtually no community, there's virtually uh, no next door that is not affected in what we're discussing today. So just hold it, please. Do not change the station, don't touch the dial. We're just going to go on a short, brief advertisement break now. Thank you, our dear listeners. We welcome you back, our dear listeners. So We have been discussing the subject matter, domestic abuse, and as many as need help, please do not hesitate to either contribute, or if you want to be part of the show, you want to chat on Facebook, on YouTube, we are live as well. So we're happy to receive your comments. And if you are a survivor or you're actually in it now, do not remain quiet, do not remain silent. Please, you need to speak out, and you need to do that in good time. So you can reach us through these various platforms. When you go onto the website of Radio Fazar, there is a dedicated telephone number there. You can also reach us. So there are various ways of reaching us. So you can receive help, you can receive attention in good time. I'm just going to welcome back now my guests as we look again into the incidents of domestic abuse, domestic violence. Please, Veronica, can you tell us what you were trying to explain to us before the break?
Yeah, sure. And thank you very much, Olu. Thank you very much, listeners on Radio Fazar 97.1 FM. Thank you for keeping the dial locked in. And we hope that you have shared it with other people, family and friends. Because as Olu was saying just before the break, he was saying, you know, in terms of the statistics, it's actually informing us that people suffering from domestic abuse is closer in a radius than we actually think. And we're also trying to ensure that we all are aware of the responsibility that we have to each other to be able to talk about domestic abuse and to be able to offer people support. And we will be looking at how that's done later on. However, what we were talking about before the break, we were talking about repetition, how to differentiate an unhealthy relationship by the repetition of abuse, the repeated times that the person has been or is abusive towards you. Is this happening to you right now, where the abuse is happening maybe on a daily basis, maybe on a weekly basis, maybe fortnightly? However, the problem being the repetition, that you don't actually know when this is going to happen, when the next incident is going to happen, but you are sure that it's going to happen again. This is how you can differentiate whether your relationship is abusive or not, by the repetition of the abuse. If you feel fearful, it's an abusive relationship, because you shouldn't be loved. If you're in love, if that person is your loved one, the person that's supposed to protect you, the person that is supposed to look after you, why would you then feel fearful of that individual? What kind of impact is that going to have on you? Are you walking on eggshells?
Where there is love, there shouldn't be fear.
That's right.
One is mutually exclusive of the other. Where there is love, there shouldn't be fear.
Absolutely.
Just to buttress what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. There shouldn't be fear there at all. And repetition, again, is something that we need to think about. Is there a repeat behavior that you keep seeing in that relationship that's making you making you fearful, making you feel uncomfortable, making you unhappy? And sometimes, we have to, when we talk about feeling unhappy in a relationship, sometimes we want to try to hold that responsibility on that individual to make us happy. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think that, we have to have that responsibility for ourselves to ensure that we are responsible for our own happiness as well. We can't be just solely dependent, because sometimes, you know, in relationships, you know, people become so entrenched, you know, our lives become so entwined and entrenched that you're no longer a singular, you are a plural, you are, you know, two do become one, which is absolutely fine. But if you lose all of your sense of who you are at the same time, then I don't think that's healthy at all.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's going to be a problem.
Causes problems. Yeah.
So what you're saying is absolutely true.
Yeah. Thank you, Ulu. And I hope those that are listening, that, you know, if it's resonating with you, you reach out and get that help and get that support. Despite the fact that women are 3 times, Ulu, more likely to be arrested, women are, in fact, I should say, are more likely to be arrested when it comes to incidents of domestic abuse. Service data shows us that 93%.
So some ladies could be abusers themselves. That's what you're telling us.
That's not exactly what it's telling us, but it's interesting that, you know, that needs to be brought into the equation. And I'm just looking at it from a practical kind of perspective, that the police, I'm just going to kind of set the scene for you now, that there's been an abusive incident and the police have been called, whether it be a neighbor, a child, or whoever calls the police, or even the victim survivor, or even the perpetrator calls the police sometimes. So this, if the perpetrator calls the police, this could account for some of the statistics in terms of the woman being arrested. But I'm also looking at it from the perspective that if the police turn up, what do they see? What is it that they might see? And what they might see is a woman, I'm going to say, because that's what we're talking about, being very hysterical. You know, this has happened, that's happened. You know, not being able to be calmed down, possibly, maybe even because of the line of questioning, they might, you know, it could be the way that they react could cause them to be not being able to be calmed down. That could cause them to be arrested as well. And then the perpetrator on top of that saying, oh, well, it's her, she's done it. But I also know, you know, sometimes a scratch or abuse or a bruise because of the perpetrator has sustained that bruise, a slap, you know, or a scratch on their face or something like that could result. So there's, sorry, Ulu?
It's a black eye.
I think black eye is a bit excessive. I'm going to say that if, you know, if either of them had a black eye, I'm going to be more inclined to think that it was that they are the victim and not the perpetrator. But I'm not going to say that that's a fact, but you'd be more inclined to think that if somebody has sustained a black eye, that they are the victim and the person that gave them the black eye is the perpetrator. But it's interesting to see that women are more likely to be arrested. But I don't share that information to say that, you know, we don't share this information to say if you're a woman suffering from domestic abuse that you're going to be arrested. That isn't the case at all. And the police are very much trained. Yeah, they're very much trained, and they have specialized police in domestic abuse, that if they get a call, the preference will be that those specialist police will go out because they will be able to handle the situation more effectively. And we're glad that, you know, in today's age that police are more, they're doing a good job, and they are more trained in domestic abuse and domestic violence. So I was saying, service data shows that 93% of the defendants in domestic abuse court cases, this is clarity now, they are male. So the ones that get prosecuted, they are male, and not, the ratio is greater for males to be prosecuted as opposed to females. Yeah.
That's right.
Do we have any questions or anything coming up at all, Ulu, that we need to maybe address? I don't know. Let's just have a quick check to ensure that no one's being ignored. I don't know if there is, because we're next going to be talking about the effects it has on children.
I do not have any question coming in at this time.
No questions.
just-
Okay, so the questions and everything, they're all just so people are aware, they are all anonymized, aren't they? So no, we won't be saying this is your
That's
name
right.
and this
You
is
don't
the
need to put your
question.
name. You don't even need to put your address. Just express yourself. Tell us what's going on with you, how you need help, and then we know how to contact you.
Yeah, so your name's not going to come up on the screen or anything like that. It's all very private and confidential. So if you do want to ask a question on any of the platform, what platforms are we on again?
We are on WhatsApp, on the WhatsApp telephone number, which is actually on your own screen of Radio Faza as we speak. So you can't miss it. But nevertheless, I can read out the telephone number to you. It is 073 99 981 971. Again, 073 99 981 971. That's the WhatsApp number to contact us.
Okay, excellent.
And then, of course, we are streaming live on Facebook. We are also live on YouTube. So you have various ways of reaching us, and we get back to you.
And I believe that we're going to be here again next week at the same time.
We're going to be here next week, Thursday again, between 11 a.m. and just before 1 p.m.
So we're hoping that, that you share it with others. This radio show.
Share the information with anyone that is quite close to you. Share the conversation and refer them to 97.1 FM Radio Faza. You can go by the website, you can go by your telephone, whichever way is most convenient for you.
Absolutely. And they can, if they miss it, they can always replay it, can't they, on Facebook or YouTube?
That's correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. So, Olu, we're going to be talking about domestic violence and abuse on children now.
Okay.
And, sometimes people in abusive relationships, they tend to think that, or not have that kind of awareness of how it affects the children. Or they sometimes think that because the child is in another room, the child was sleeping, that it's not going to have an effect on the children. But I just want to ensure that you're aware that it does have an effect on children. And with this, I can actually share with you, and I will share more over the coming weeks, that I'm a survivor. I'm a survivor of domestic abuse. I was a child that experienced domestic abuse within my home as a child, not recognizing it as abuse, obviously because of my early years, but I can definitely say congruently that children are affected by domestic abuse and domestic violence within the home. So first of all, let's look at some statistics. 20% of children in the UK have lived with an adult perpetrating domestic violence. That's 20%. 20%. I think when you're a child and you're living in a household where there's domestic abuse, the effects that it has on that child, it could remain with them forever. It can stay with them. The things that happen, that you witness as a child, you're not able to articulate it. You may not be able to articulate it. You might not be able to say, this is what's happening. You won't even understand what is happening. But you know that what's happening doesn't make you feel good inside. That young person, that child that can't understand why mummy and daddy arguing, why is this happening? They won't be able to articulate it, but they will be able to describe how they feel, that fear they might be feeling, that uncertainty.
Thank you for sharing with us and even making yourself, what's it called? Making us realize that's something that you have actually passed through and you can resonate with yourself. So you're not just talking from the head, you're not talking something theoretical, you're talking of something experiential, something you've passed through before, something you can identify with. So thank you for sharing with us. I'm on that one. Yeah.
That's fine, because you're right, Uli. And I don't just jump out and tell people, but I think it's important that, it's not a tick box kind of thing. I'm very passionate about the information that we do and what the subject matter that we're talking about, because it's personal to me also. So 20% of children in the UK have lived with an adult perpetrating domestic abuse. 62% of children in households where domestic abuse is happening are also directly harmed. 62%, Olu, of children in households where domestic violence is happening is also directly harmed. And this is statistics, factual statistics from the NSPCC. Yes, National Society for Prevention for Cruelty to Children. Yeah. So this is factual information, researched information. An estimated 39,000 babies under 1 years of age live with domestic abuse in the UK. An estimated 39,000. Who helps the children?
Well, if I can just pause you there, why this trend? This is huge. What's the problem with our society? What's going on? Has this actually improved because over time, or it's getting even worse? What do you think?
Oh, definitely getting worse. And I think now, especially now, because of the pandemic and being locked in, because when we think about some of the challenges that we had during the lockdown, Olu, we had furlough, people that were furloughed, people that lost jobs, homeschooling, that additional pressure. Some people have 3, 4, 5 children in one household, and even in one room, not being allowed to go out in the house maybe 23 hours a day. As you said, prisoners, weren't we? We were prisoners in our own home. And for some, that might, if there isn't abuse, there was challenges that we faced just being locked down. Yes. Can you imagine how this exasperated those that
on the very few resources available, pressure on the devices available? Everyone wants to do one thing or the other on the same desktop, on the same laptop or something.
Yeah.
Or even the use of telephone, the use of television. You want to watch a program, the other person is not interested in the program, and that's the only TV for your family. So
Absolutely.
I can imagine. And so the adults are frustrated because they either lost their jobs or they are compelled to remain indoors. Children cannot relate with their friends as they used to do. So they have no option, and everybody's just talking there. So I can imagine.
Yeah, it's really difficult, as parents, as adults, it's challenging. It was challenging for us, let alone how this affects the children.
Yeah.
Again, because they can't articulate themselves. We can ring someone and say, we're frustrated, or we can describe our emotions. But young people, babies, under 1 we're talking about, and older, that are in this situation, stuck at home. It just, I just think when you think about domestic abuse and you think about the lockdown, and where there's domestic abuse, it makes me think about a pressure cooker, Olu. Do you know a pressure cooker?
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's there, it takes a while for the steam to kind of, you know, and then when you try to take the lid off it, that steam, you know, and that to me is, you know, what an abusive relation, we can liken it to, that pressure cooker where things are kind of just, you know, all getting, the heat is, and the pressure is,
everything bottled up there.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it becomes explosive in that home, and that child no longer feels safe and secure. How important, Olu, is it for you and I when we're at home, for example, how important is it for us that, I don't know, once we lock our front doors and we lock our back doors and we lock our windows, that we feel safe and secure? But sometimes if you, in an abusive relationship, even if you lock your front door, you lock your window, you lock your back door, you're actually not safe at all.
Not at all. Not at all. You've just locked yourself in, so to say, into an environment that you are not actually happy with.
Yeah.
And you cannot walk out and go and sleep on the street, unfortunately. So you're just held bound in there.
Yeah.
So it's
very sad, isn't it?
It is. Indeed.
It's very, very sad for those that are affected by domestic abuse, sexual violence. It's very, you know, it's very sad. And
what's even a bit concerning for me is that even children, infants, are not left out of the consequences. The statistics has it that even children under the age of 1, they live with some parents who engage in substance abuse, you know, misuse. And so it spills out on the children. That young, I mean, it's worrisome. It's very, very something that gives some concern, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, when we talk about, you just mentioned substance misuse, and sometimes we see people and they are using substances and we just think, oh, druggy, you know, we start to kind of attribute labels to that individual. Yeah. Similarly, I'm going to say, with children, but let's look at the substance misuse first. And, you know, we kind of attribute it to, you know, oh, they're addicted, bad company, things like that. But do we actually ever attribute it to what might be going on for that individual? And is it a coping mechanism for that individual? Because if you're suffering from the degradation of domestic abuse, how do you cope? How are you coping? How are you coping? If you're not reaching out and you're not getting help, if you're not reaching out and having that conversation, if you don't feel like you can speak to family and friends, how are you coping? How are you going to be coping? But, you know, as we keep saying, you're not alone. There's help and there's support out there for you. Even with the drug misuse, you can still get the help and the support that you may need. Just reaching out to the listeners that might be listening in to this show. Get the help that you need. But also as well, going back to the children, sometimes, Lou, we look at behavior of children, especially when they're a bit naughty, they're misbehaving or presenting challenging behavior, throwing tantrums and things. We tend to look at the behavior, don't we? We might even label it. We might say that child's behavior is that child. That parent, the parents are not, you know, they're not chastising the child, or, you know, they're not being able to discipline the child enough, or, you know, their discipline methods are not actually being effective, or that child is spoiled, or, you know, because they're behaving in an inappropriate way or challenging way, should I say. But do we ever think about what is causing that behavior? Why is that child, that young person, that teenager behaving in the way that they are behaving? Could it be because they are of what they're witnessing at home, what they're enduring at home, unable to talk about it, that then they actually are acting out because of what they're seeing?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's very deep, don't you think, Olu? It's very, very deep.
It is deep. So that's why no one should be too quick to judge. No one should be too quick to label. No one should be prejudicial on anyone out there. So our best advice we can give now is that as a parent, even as a child, if you have means of reaching us, because we have children who are teenagers who are actually very, very active on social media as well. So if you're a victim, please reach out to us on 97.1 FM Faza Radio on that WhatsApp telephone number 07399 and we are streaming live on YouTube as well. You can also communicate with us, you can chat with us via your Facebook. So you have various opportunities, various platforms to express yourself. Do not bottle it in, as we have rightly said, it's just like a pressure cooker. You won't know where it will spill out from. So, or when. So it's a question of when, not if. So we're just going to go again on an advert break now. So just stay tuned with us. Thank you, our dear listeners. So we welcome you back, our dear listeners, to this show. And this seems to be the last segment of this show for today. We are live again next Thursday as from 11 a.m. all the way to just before 1 p.m. So today we've been discussing on the subject matter, what is domestic abuse? We have made an attempt to look at the huge statistics of the people that are affected by domestic abuse. So we're just going to continue from where we stopped before the advert break that we had. And we have been sharing today with our special guest, Veronica, was giving us a lot of insight. So just before the break, we were discussing the impact this is having even on children, even infants in the home. So we're just going to continue from where we stopped.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Uli. Thank you very much, listeners on 97.1 FM Radio Faza this afternoon, talking about domestic abuse behind the screens. Domestic abuse, get help. Okay, so we were talking about the effects that domestic abuse has on children, and also, you know, parents that are trying to cope might be using substances in order to manage the
Frustration.
the frustrations, and a coping mechanism. But between year 2005, excuse me, and 2015, 19 children in 12 families were tragically killed by violent fathers who have been allowed to see them through formal and informal child contact agreements. We know sometimes when the relationship is broken down and they separate, the in between all of, we're talking about the
custody. They were talking of sharing custody else.
trying to arrange something where dad and mum can still raise the children dually, and that arrangement sometimes, unfortunately, and I can definitely agree that it can be the most challenging, frustrating thing. And also that perpetrators of domestic abuse also use child contact, formal and informal agreements, in order to still have access to the victim. So they continuously use it as a means to have access and to continue abusing the victim. So even though the victim survivor thinks, well, I still want you to have contact because you might be a really terrible husband, you might be a really terrible partner, but you're a fantastic dad. So I want you to have contact with the children. But unfortunately, or fantastic mum, let's just ensure that we look at both genders. But unfortunately, sometimes the abuser, the perpetrator of abuse, use that to further abuse the victim, survivor. I'm just going to kind of finish here, and if I'm going to talk about towards the end of the show now, Ulu, we're just going to quickly have a look at a case study, which we'll try to do at this stage, if that's okay with you.
That's fine by me. So let's
excellent.
Something practical.
Okay, but before we go into that, just in terms of the children, we just to finish and close this section, if you don't mind for now, is that sometimes people are in relationships and the relationship is going really, really well. It seems like it's going really, really well. And then they have this conversation, or they may not have the conversation about having children. But, a child is on the way, the victim survivor becomes pregnant. And at this stage, this might be the only, is that the right word? No, this might be the occasion where they first experience domestic abuse. So I know that people that I've worked with, they've been, in the abusive relationship for maybe I mean, in an abuse and in a healthy relationship, what seems like a healthy relationship for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And as soon as they get pregnant, it's the first time that they're pushed down the stairs. I kid you not, Olu. I kid you not. As severe as that, with child, pregnant, that's the first time that person gets a slap, a kick, a punch. Why? Why?
I was going to ask you, why would that happen?
Because
That's the period that they're supposed to receive the best of attention, the best of care, so why would that happen?
Because they are at their most vulnerable
Stage.
Yeah. So I've agreed now. I've agreed to marry you, Ulu. I've agreed to have your child. And now, because you've got power and control, because I've committed to you, this relationship is going to make me vulnerable, because I'm not only married to you, I'm also carrying your child. What is the likelihood of at that stage for me to kind of run away?
See.
And when we think about domestic abuse, we also have to remember that it's a cycle. It's a cycle. So today I'm going to be really nice to you. And then tomorrow I'm not going to be so pleasant. Today I'm going to be nice. 2 days later, I'm going to be abusive towards you. So, you've got the period of time where the perpetrator is really pleasant. And then you've got the abuse happens and then they're pleasant again. So there's a period of time where the victim survivor feels secure and she feels safe, or he feels safe, but the abuse is going to happen again. So there's all of that confusion that's going on for that victim, survivor, all of that all that, confusion. But, he's like, she's nice. And then, these are the things that they go through. So let's look at.
Does that happen to them just during pregnancy, or it can also happen even postpartum, after the delivery?
Oh yeah, after and then it gets worse. It intensifies. It now you're actually able to say you're in an abusive relationship. So you didn't see it before, yeah? You got pregnant, the abuse started. It could be the very first time that person's verbally abusive towards you, starts criticizing, oh, you're fat, you're this, you're that, and all the rest of it. And then after that, the abuse continues, but it gets worse because there's ownership there now, isn't it? I've got that ownership over you. We've got children, we're married. I've got that ownership. I can do what I want to you now because you can't go anywhere. You're trapped.
It can escalate to any level.
And it can escalate at any level. Absolutely. I mean, I'm giving you examples, sharing examples, but they're not all factual examples. Every case is different. Every case needs to be looked at on an individual by individual case. But I'm just giving you examples today. Thank you. So I'm going to talking about examples. I'm just going to jump straight in and talk about this and share with you this case study, Olu. Yeah. Angelina was born overseas, and English is her second language. She met Barry after coming to the UK on a student visa. She was working to support herself and studying to improve her English skills and have her foreign professional qualification recognised. Barry had a responsible job. Neither had been married or in a long-term relationship. They soon started to live together as a couple, and Angelina applied for a partner visa, spousal visa, with Barry as her sponsor. Early on in the relationship, Barry urged Angelina to get a job that didn't involve night and work weekend shifts so that she could be at home to take care of the cooking and the house and available to go on short breaks and holidays with Barry. Angelina, however, enjoyed her job and was very happy to work hard for good pay. Barry kept insisting until one day when Angelina was leaving for work, he hid her car keys. Eventually, he gave her the keys, but he told her it would be the last time he would allow it. Barry tried and failed to find Angelina a full-time weekday job for higher pay. So she was forced to give up her shift work and become a housewife to Barry. While bored and frustrated at home, she applied for countless positions without success. Barry pushed her to apply for roles that she had not yet qualified for, and she resisted. Barry took more and more control of her daily life. He scheduled weekends away according to a strict timetable that didn't suit Angelina. He took her along for long car trips that Angelina found quite unpleasant, and he wouldn't allow her to listen to the music that she liked. And he always chose the destinations of where they would go. She didn't really enjoy it. Angelina would not tolerate being dictated to. So she was struggling, being told what to do and how to do it. And they argued frequently. Often, Barry reminded her that he had control over her visa and threatened to write to the immigration authorities withdrawing his sponsorship. Barry had all of Angelina's immigration documents and details in his possession. In time, Angelina got another shift job that she was reasonably content with. Barry was angry because she was earning less money, and he complained that her English was getting worse. Barry demanded that Angelina transfer all of her wages to him, and he would then put an amount each week in a joint account that she could access to pay for her groceries and household expenses. Again, Angelina questioned these demands, asserting that she was happy to share, but was also entitled to her own money to buy, for example, gifts for him. Barry never deposited enough money in the joint account, and Angelina had to regularly ask for more, which she found really humiliating. Meanwhile, Barry was free to spend his wages and the balance of Angelina's as he pleased. Angelina was made responsible for cooking, household duties, while also working and studying. He criticized and belittled her efforts around the house. He bought her clothes that she felt were age inappropriate, and she found them quite uncomfortable. Sex occurred on Barry's terms, without any regard of Angelina's wishes. He told her she was required to sleep with him as a condition of her visa. And if she didn't, he would report her. He told Angelina that South Asian women manipulated men so they could have children and acquire them a majority share of incomes and assets. Angelina concluded that Barry had pursued her because he believed he could take advantage of her visa dependency. When they first met, Barry spoke to Angelina of many friends. However, she never saw these friends, and Barry refused invitations for them to spend time with some of Angelina's close friends and members who lived nearby. I don't know how this sounds to you, Olu.
Sounds awkward to me.
Like, there sounds like there's a lot of control going on in this relationship. Absolutely. And I'm sure there's people that can resonate with this case study.
Taking full charge, full control. So anyway, is that it?
No, there's more. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Barry had refused invitations to spend time with Angelina's close friends and family members, and they lived nearby. He monitored her phone, her internet activity. Barry objected to Angelina speaking in her first language. On one occasion, when she was on the phone to a family member in her home country, Barry wielded a knife, demanding she end the conversation straight away and cook dinner. Angelina was aware that Barry also kept rifles at the house. Angelina was becoming increasingly isolated, demeaned, and depressed by Barry's abuse. She started working more to get away from him. Barry then set up a whiteboard in the kitchen, recording her roster. He would ring her and text her and repeatedly at work and demand to know, what shift are you on? Angelina says she felt like a slave, working long hours, being constantly monitored and relinquishing all of her wages to Barry. The situation became intolerable for Angelina, and she left to stay with a family friend. A family member encouraged her to get some advice and to seek a support service. And she was then referred to get help around her visa application, around a protection order, also known as a non-molestation order. And she was also able to get some psychological and emotional support by seeing a counselor.
Wow. It sounds to me that, is this really real? Is this a real life situation? Is it happening in the 21st century? Or,
Absolutely.
I mean, it's appalling. I must use that language.
It's very realistic. I would just say, Ulu, if it sounds unrealistic, it's very, very realistic.
True.
Every part of it. And isolation is something that a perpetrator wants to gain. He wants to be able to be that victim survivor, to be the only source and the only source of support. So they will, slowly but surely pull you away from all of your family and friends, so that they can solely have you to themselves. Sometimes they will move you out of let's just say you live in Nottinghamshire, and they will take you to live, in
Oxfordshire or something.
Yeah, absolutely, in Hertfordshire, so that you are miles and miles away from everything that's familiar to you, so that you can be completely dependent on them, so that they can abuse you. This is the reality, Ulu. This is the reality of domestic abuse.
Thank you very much for sharing that case study with us. Dear listeners, you have heard the case study, which we will still be dwelling on, because our time is almost up. But within the last 5 or so or less minutes, about 4 minutes that we have now, if we can just trash a bit, have a look at a number of abuses that this lady, Angelina, was subjected to, and then probably we can take it up from there the next time on this show. Dear listeners, this is 97.1 FM Faza Radio. You want to contribute, you will have a say about the case study that she just read to you now, please feel free to express yourself, participate on Facebook, on YouTube. We are live now, and then you can send comments and questions, or probably you resonate with what is being read, probably something that you're passing through now. Please, this is the time to give us a shout. This is the time to cry out for help, seek help. 07399 981 971. That's the WhatsApp telephone number. Thank you again, Veronica. So we're going to attempt to have a look at, because as you were reading, I can see that there are quite a long list of kinds of abuse that Angelina had been subjected to the Barry. Am I correct?
You are absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's any that you were able to identify, or that you'd like to share. What was you able?
At the very least, I can see the aspect of the economic or financial control or abuse. I mean, it went to the extent of not wanting her to have a full-time job. And when she got a full-time job, he tried not to have her to settle down in that kind of a job so that he could still be giving her stipends to survive on. That is modern day slavery. All because of his selfish gains. He just wants to keep her indoors, laboring like a slave. That's modern day slavery, isn't it? It's a form of slavery.
It is, yeah.
So that's one. And then I don't know whether it's classed as technological control now. He wants to be monitoring her calls with people back at home in her country and giving her time. This is exactly what prisoners are being subjected to by their guests. You have a limited time to spend with your guests. So apparently, Angelina has become a prisoner in where she's supposed to be homely, where we can consider as a home for her, has now become a prison. That's the implication. So there are loads and loads of controls that, and everything is just being centered around his own selfish ambition. So I'm sorry to say, I'm not being judgmental, but I'm just following what you read to us in that case study. So again, I'm not sure we can do justice to this subject matter today.
No, I don't think that we can, Olu. And, just to be mindful that we're now, I think, coming to the end of the show. And it's really important as a professional that we ensure that those that may have been listening and feel that any part of what we shared they're able to resonate with, or, it has caused them any kind of distress, that at the end of the show, please, I think you can go on to the Radio Faz's website.
Yes.
And Ulu's also furnished you with the telephone number, and you will be supported by professionals that are able to support you, not telling you what to do, but just ensuring that your options are.
We assure you everything remain confidential.
Yeah.
And anonymous. So
absolutely.
You need to come out. This is the time, this is the opportunity you've got to speak out, please.
Absolutely.
So we'll be going on off air now. We've come to the end of today's show, literally. So, and we expect that you please share this information with your friends, with your neighbors who could be passing through this kind of unfortunate situation. Those who are survivors, those who actually, it's real. What we're talking about is not just anything, it's not a made-up story. So this is the time for you to share this information with them. There are various social media platforms to connect besides the telephone number that was dictated to you. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook Live. And this program, Behind the Screens, Domestic Abuse, Seek Help, holds every Thursday. We start at 11 a.m. all the way to just before 1 p.m. I must thank you, Veronica, for coming up today to be our guest. Thank you for making our time. Thank you for preparing to share with us. Also, we are privileged to hear from you, being a victim yourself in the past, that you have you're a survivor, so to say, as a child, you were sharing with us the other time. So we're just going to round it up today, and we take it off from where we stopped today when we meet next Thursday. Please, let's be fair, let's be safe, and let's be just in all that we do. Thank you very much, our dear listeners, for joining us today. We'll see you next time on this show. Behind the Scene, Seek Help. Domestic Abuse, Seek Help. Thank you very much.